What's up, everybody? My name's Big Cam and welcome back to another movie review. And today we are talking about 2026's How to Make a Killing. And this is now streaming on HBO Max, and it was the current #1 movie on HBO Max. And I originally had not heard great reviews about this, and now I'm not sure why after watching this. I actually quite enjoyed this film. But this is from director Patton Ford, and it looks like he's the writer-director of this, and it looks like he's coming off of 2022's Emily the Criminal with Aubrey Plaza, and that seemed to be like his first big screen script and film that he did. And, you know, so he's a young guy, he's a writer-director though, and shout out Patton Ford, good for him. And he was able to get Glen Powell to be the Beckett Redfellow, and Margaret Qualley was his Julia, who was like his childhood crush, but then grew up to be Margaret Qualley. And I was like, whoo, it hurt. Every time she showed up, I was just like, whoo, whoo, Margaret Qualley, Jesus Christ, eating up dialogue. And like, it was just so mysterious every time she came in, because you were like, does she know? Does she not know? Does she not care? Like, I guess, you know, like. And then Jessica Henwick was in there being freaking gorgeous. Love Jessica Henwick. She was in Glass Onion. It says she was in Star Wars Force Awakens. I don't necessarily remember her from that, but maybe she was wearing a mask or something. She says she was in The Matrix, The Gray Man. She says she's been in 29 movies now, so she's been working. I feel like I know her probably best as the character that's like alongside Iron Fist, and potentially might be coming back as Iron Fist in like Daredevil Born Again Season 3. Interesting. But the people that he got to be the Redfellow estate was really interesting, and we'll go through the actors. But it was just funny that like Glen Powell, like I wrote in my Letterboxd description that this was a mix of his like Hitman movie, if you guys watched Hitman with Glen Powell a couple years ago, and if you know American Psycho with like Christian Bale, it's like a mix of those two things, because obviously Glen Powell isn't like just a psycho, you know, but like he's doing bad stuff and murders and stuff like that, so that's like along the lines of like the American Psycho. But also like the Hitman, he was doing all these different disguises, so like he doesn't go that hard with the disguises as he did in that Hitman movie, but he does have to kind of be a chameleon and blend into these different environments to be able to kill the members of this family so that he ends up getting the fortune, right? And it's like one of those things where, you know, you are a part of this inheritance for this super wealthy family, and you know it trickles down through the family tree, and it's written into the will that whoever the oldest surviving member of this family is who gets the money, right? So initially, he should have been a part of this family, but his mother got pregnant at 18, and her father, the head of the estate, tells her to kick rocks. You know, that won't be allowed here. And, you know, the mother stood up to this guy and decided, you know what, fuck you, I choose the baby, I'm leaving. So she leaves the family, goes and lives in Newark, right? She could be living in this mansion, in this manor, with a butler and a fenced-in, gated driveway, you know what I mean? Like, but instead he's in this small little place in Newark, and like, throughout the movie, they kind of pose the question, like, do you need that $1 billion to be happy? And it's kind of funny, at one point he's talking to a priest and he's like, fuck it, let's be real, money does buy happiness, we're all adults here, moving on. You know, like, and I've always had the belief that money doesn't buy happiness, but like $28 billion could buy a lot of happiness, you know what I mean? Like, at the very least, $28 billion could buy pleasure every second of every day, and then you'd never have to think about being happy because you'd always be pleasurable, you know what I mean? So like, pleasure, happy, same kind of thing, but pleasure fades a lot quicker than happiness, you know what I mean? But if you got enough fucking money to just keep funding the pleasure well, might as well, you know? Like, I don't know. It's terrible, but the little Letterboxd synopsis for this reads, $28 billion inheritance, 7 relatives standing in the way. Disowned at birth by his obscenely wealthy family, blue-collar Beckett Redfellow will stop at nothing to reclaim his inheritance, no matter how many relatives stand in his way. You know, so it's a decent little, like, idea for a movie, you know what I mean? Like, because everyone can kind of get behind it at a certain point. You're like, well, it would be fucked up to kill all your family, but if they had $28 billion standing in your way, might as well. And then at first he's like, could I even do this? Is it possible? And then he's like thinking it through, and then he accidentally kills the guy, and he goes, Was it that fucking easy? Did I get away with it? Am I that fucking good? Right? And then he just goes through and starts killing everybody. And like, it's funny because they open this movie with him in jail. And, you know, obviously spoilers at this point. If you didn't want to hear them, fuck off. But like, he opens this in jail and you're like, wait, how did he get here? He's about to get sentenced to death. And apparently, like, you know, he goes through all these killings of the people in his family. But by the end of the movie, Margaret Qualley has the leg up on him and, you know, frames him for a murder that he didn't do, right? So he did like 4 or 5 murders that she's blackmailing him for, but then frames him for the one murder he didn't do, puts a letter out at the last second so he's no longer guilty, found innocent, he's free to go, and he walks out of prison. Jessica Henwick, the girl he, you know, should have married, kind of just hands him back his locket with a piece of his mom's hair in it and then drives away. But then he looks across the parking lot and sees Margaret Qualley standing in front of a Rolls Royce. And it's like, listen, you could have had the nice girl that you guys had a lot in common and you guys really did like each other and were falling in love and you were interested in literature. You know, like the two of them were really good with each other, but they were broke, right? So she pieces, and then he goes, all right, you know, and he looks at Margaret Qualley like, yeah, I guess I always did want to marry this girl from childhood, even though she tried to blackmail him along the way and was married to somebody else, you know, like, so he, you know, was doing his own thing, but she was like, nah, I want my Beckett back, you know. So by the end of the movie, they're pulling back into the mansion, and it's Margaret Qualley and him, and he had kind of said to her when he was a kid, like, I'm gonna get the Red Fellow fortune one day. And she's like, oh really? Are you trying to impress me? It would be okay if you were. You know, like, and oh, you know, kisses him after he does the piano to impress her. You know, like, I was really interested in this movie. And like, as much as he was with Jessica Henwick, I was like, damn, I really wanted to see Glen Powell and Margaret Qualley get nasty. You know, like, yeah, I wanted to see Glen Powell and Jessica Henwick get nasty. But hey, that's just the freaking me, but that's alright. But just like the Red Fellows that he had to kill, right? Like, I think he kills Raph Law, freaking Taylor first, and then he goes to like MacArthur, and then he goes to Mary, and then eventually gets to like Topher Grace's character, Steven. He was kind of creepy and weird, but, you know, got him anyways. Zach Woods, I kind of felt bad for that one, but he was kind of playing a fucked up weird character. Bill Camp was the only one that he necessarily didn't kill, because his uncle, right, like, as soon as he met him at like a funeral, he was like, I'm your nephew. He goes, fucking no way. You know, so then the guy like kind of brought him under his wing and, you know, brought him into the family business and whatnot, and the guy has a heart attack and dies, you know, like, so that's the only one that like he doesn't kill is Bill Camp's character, his uncle. And I actually really liked the cast and crew of this. I thought they did a great job. But then it comes down to the last Red Fellow, and it was Whitelaw was the name of him, played by Ed Harris, and I actually really liked, you know, this appearance from Ed Harris. I really like Ed Harris as an actor too. So him being like the big bad of the movie, you know what I mean? And like he goes there just kind of like, oh, well, my grandfather invited me to dinner now that I'm the last one in the family. But it felt like maybe he was on to him. So like he shows up, it's raining, they canceled dinner. He brings him into a room, brings him, you know, gives him a shotgun, goes, shoot me. And he doesn't. And he, you know, goes to leave, you know, and he goes to the front door is locked. All of a sudden he's getting chased around this mansion by his grandfather that he just met, shooting him, whatnot. And then, you know, eventually he has to kill his own grandfather, but that's not necessarily murder because it was the only actual self-defense murder that he did. So they can't necessarily put him in jail for that murder, even though it was a murder, but it was in self-defense, so he's like free and clear type of thing. You know, so like he's literally about to like, oh, go back to his girlfriend, go back to his wife, whatever, and be happily ever after, but no, gets arrested for something he didn't do, and that was the death of Lyle, who was Margaret Qualley's husband, and she kills him with a letter opener, and he's like, my entire life comes down to a fucking letter opener. But like, you know, as much as I want to see a sequel to this, I just kind of wanted to see the next 30 minutes of like what Margaret Qualley and Glen Powell have been up to, you know what I mean? Like, did they live happily ever after? Did he just go back and they were miserable and she was living her own life with all the money and he was just like, you know, taking his allowance that she's giving him and doing whatever he wants, you know? Like, but at a certain point, like, you know, if you got billions of dollars, you don't have to work a 9 to 5 anymore. You can just golf, do whatever the fuck you want, you know? I don't know. But it poses an interesting question. Would you kill all of the members of your family in front of you to get a $28 billion inheritance? If so, that's how you make a killing. Like, So yeah, this is more of an instructional video than a movie. But no, this movie I thought was decent. I thought it was pretty good. I didn't necessarily understand all the hate that this originally got. You know, I like Glen Powell. He's a good leading man. It's a good way to spend a little over 90 minutes. I think it's like an hour and 45, hour and 50-minute movie. And yeah, Margaret Qualley is a phenomenal leading woman. Jessica Henwick, I could watch on screen, do anything. She's so charming and beautiful. Love that. Really loved the cast and crew in this. And Glen Powell, man, he's been doing his damn thing. I mean, he's now on his 45th movie, and he, you know, he's born in '88, so he hasn't been acting all that long, you know. But like just these last few years, he did Twisters in 2024. He did Running Man in 2025. He was in The Dark Knight Rises. That was one of his earlier roles, along with like Spy Kids 3D. I think that was like his first movie. But he did the Hitman movie I was talking about in 2023. So there's like, you know, 2024, 2024, 2025, 2023, you know. So like this guy's been working. And then he did Top Gun Maverick 2022, you know. So like this guy's been around. Anyone But You with Sydney Sweeney in 2023. That was a pretty good movie. Shout out Glen Powell. He's been doing the damn thing, and he seems like a very charming, nice guy, and he's handsome. So yeah, he's like this generation's Brad Pitt at the current moment. You know what I mean? Like, and he's playing the role perfectly. He's got the chiseled jaw. He's got the ability to say dialogue in a good way. You know, he can be charming. He can be aggressive. He can be a killer. You know, like, way to show your range there, Mr. Powell. But overall, for me, I gave this movie 3.5 out of 5 stars, about a 7 out of 10. If I had to give it a true 10 score, it's probably like a 7.5, honestly. Pretty good 3.5 out of 5 star movie. I would love to hear your thoughts on this movie down in the comment section below, or if you want to send them to my other social medias, links for those down in the description below. But now all I'll have to do today is edit this video, and then if you saw the shirt, I'm going to see Supergirl later today, so I'm so hyped for that, even though some people are already hating online on it and they haven't even seen the movie yet. That's like my #1 pet peeve. I hate when like movies just get negativity for no reason, but like getting negative reviews is a part of life, right? Like, you're gonna get negative reviews, but to get negative reviews before it's even come out by a bunch of losers that are just like, she's a woman, I like Superman, I will not be here for Supergirl. You know, and it's just like these hateful, sexist men that are like, fucking Supergirl sucks. You know, like, just crying to their mommies, like, Supergirl's awful, where's the Snyderverse? Like, it's just sad that this is the world we live in. It really is. Like, getting review bombed. The movie's not even out yet. You know what I mean? Like, it's wild. But don't believe the haters on whatever they said about this movie. Go check out movies for yourself and decide whether you like them or not for yourself. 3.5 out of 5 stars for me on How to Make a Killing. #1 movie on HBO Max, so I can't be the only one that wanted to see this. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Comment below if you have seen this, and if you haven't, what the hell are you doing here? But either way, comment below your thoughts, and if you go and see this, come on back and comment below your thoughts, or send them to my other social medias. And if you've made it this far in the video and you would like to support the channel, the best way of doing that is dropping a like on this video, commenting down below, subscribing if you haven't already, and hit that bell so you don't miss future movie reviews and you get the notifications when those come out. Once again, my name's Big Cam, and I'll see you beautiful folks in the next video. Peace!